Roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Glad to meet you, Judge.
Roy C. Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1. Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3. J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Reverend Andrew Nunley from the Campus Drive Community Church, Fort Worth. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Let us pray. God, you are our creator, redeemer, and sustainer. God, before we ask you for anything, we want to ask for forgiveness for our sins we have committed by word, thought, or deed. Let everything be done, Father God, in spirit and in truth. I ask you right now, Father God, to bless Judge Whitley, Father God. Bless the Commissioner Court and bless the city officials. God, let's make the right decisions, Father God, that will help your community and bless your nation. God, we thank you, God, and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Honor. Members of the Court, we have three announcements as it relates to the agenda this morning. The first one is under the Auditor's Office, item 8B1. This concerns the removal of assets from the county's asset management system.
What was that? 8B1?
8B1, yes, sir. We have a revised court communication in your red folder this morning as it relates to that. Also, members of the court, under domestic relations, which is 8E1, it's a consent item. We also have a revised court communication in your folder. The only change we made on there was in the financial impact. We clarified the amount of the grant, and it was just greater information that we put on the court communication. And then finally, Commissioner Johnson, we do not have anything for closed today, so we're not going to be taking the court into closed session today.
Thank you. Oh, that's a favor for me, I'm sure.
Court members, you have before you the minutes of our special call meeting of August the 15th, our regular meeting of August the 16th, and our special call meeting of August the 17th.
Move approval of all three.
Second. You have a motion, a second. Please vote. Motion passes almost unanimously. Now unanimously. You have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have a public hearing.
Miss Flood Control.
Thank you, Judge. I'm here today to ask that the Commissioners Court conduct a public hearing to consider revising the Tarrant County flood damage prevention rules to comply with the current national program and to comply with FEMA regulations. Tarrant County is a member of FEMA, and as such, this affords the residents in Tarrant County unincorporated area the ability to purchase flood insurance. We're here today to adopt the new maps, it's incorrect. We adopted the new maps last year. These are the new regulations that incorporate those maps and to bring us in compliance with the new FEMA regs. The major revisions are that we're going to clarify the appeal process. We're going to prohibit critical facilities in the 500-year floodplain, such as hospitals, police stations, critical type facilities during an emergency. They will not be allowed the 500-year floodplain. We're also incorporating the new maps that you adopted last year from FEMA. And then a big change for our residents is that we'll require houses to be 2 foot above the base flood elevation, the 100-year elevation, instead of the current 1 foot.
This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask if anyone is here wishing to speak to this matter. Appears to be none, so I'll close the public hearing. Any action at this time that we need to take?
Yes, sir, we'd ask that you to adopt these new regulations.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
How does that moving the floor elevation from 1 foot to 2 foot affect those homes that are only 1 foot?
They would be,
What happens?
they would be grandfathered in. It would only be new construction moving forward.
Would they be able to get flood insurance?
Yes, sir, they'll be able to get flood insurance. Your flood insurance decreases as your risk decreases, the cost of flood insurance. So the 2 foot, if we make people build at 2 foot, the cost of their insurance should be slightly less because they're at less risk of flooding. But anyone from even below the base flood elevation can get insurance through FEMA. It's just very costly.
Doesn't matter what it costs.
Yes, sir. So the higher we get the house above the base flood elevation, the less risk there is now and in the future. Because what's happening as we continue to develop in the area, that the floodplains are getting wider, and so I think this is a good thing for our citizens, and they will be able to get insurance cheaper in the future, and the current people can still obtain insurance.
Just have to hope if we have a 500-year flood, they'll float.
I'm just hoping for
Is there a
a
motion?
2-hour rain.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Tremenious.
Members of the court, we have 3 additional items to bring to you this morning. Item number 1, we're requesting that the court accept an FY12 through grant from the Office of the Attorney General's as it relates to the Victim Coordinator and Liaison Grant. This is out of the District Attorney's Office.
Is this a new grant?
No, sir, it's a grant that's been in existence for over 10 years. Yes, sir.
Move approval.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, if we could go to item 3 now, because item 2 is going to be presented by Ms. McMillan. On item 3, we're requesting that the court approve an exception to the county's travel policy as it relates to transportation services.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, before we go into item 2, just a quick note. As you know, we're going to be bringing to you today the hospital district's budget, and we have 5 members of the district's board of managers in the audience at this moment. If a 6th member comes in, and we're going to need to stop our proceedings so that they can call themselves to order. They have posted this meeting, and it'll be a process very similar to what we've done in the past with the district. Ms. McMillan.
I think we're up to 6.
We got 6 right now.
We have 6 members, and then we can just ask Scott to come up and call you.
Judge, Commissioners, call to order the meeting of the Tarrant County Hospital District Board of Managers.
Thank you. Thank you. You might have a career in this.
Judge, Commissioners, we're asking you today to consider the approval of Amendment Number 1 to the participation agreement between the City of Fort Worth and Tarrant County for the Fort Worth Tax Increment Financing Zone Number 8, which is the Lancaster Corridor TIF, and to approve the amended project and financing plan for the zone. Commissioners Court approved participation in this TIF back in 2007. Zone 8, provides for an estimated $16 million in improvements, public improvements, and we are participating at 80% of our increment, and that participation is capped currently at $7 million. To date, we have contributed approximately $2 million to that TIF. Since the original plan was developed, changes in development within the zone have necessitated some amendments to the plan to provide TIF funding for future projects. And the plan, as you will see shortly, has indicated certain blocks and zones where we will be able to provide TIF funding assistance as those projects come aboard, instead of coming back to the board the Commissioners Court on a project-by-project basis. We're going to go ahead and try to look at a broad scope at this point. However, these changes don't change the maximum scope of the funding. It's still going to be $16 million, and we're still going to be capped at $7 million. It's just approving the additional projects that can be funded under the project plan. The hospital district never took action on participation in this plan, and because right now the financing plan indicates that all of this funding can be provided with just the current participation with the entities that are already participating, the staff is not recommending that we ask Commissioners Court to take any action to include the hospital district in participation of the plan amendments or in the plan at all. I'm going to ask Maggie Allen to come forward now from the City of Fort Worth, and she's going to give you an overview of what the plan changes are.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great.
Excellent.
Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Judge Whitley and County Commissioners. My name is Maggie Allen, and I'm here today representing the City of Fort Worth Housing and Economic Development Department. The original Lancaster TIF project and financing plan was approved in January 2004 and most recently amended in January 2008 before being amended again earlier this month by City Council. The plan was created with the intent to have it amended as development projects came to light and must be amended by the TIF Board and City Council each time a new project comes forward. These are our TIF finances to date as well as our projections over the next 8 years. These projections assume only 1.5% growth with no new taxable value. At the TIF expiration in 2024, the balance is estimated to be approximately $36 million. The current projects to date are the Lancaster median improvements, the widening of the Omni sidewalk, and the TMP terminal redevelopment. All of these have been completed and paid. The TMP warehouse is the only committed, uncompleted project. A number of potential projects have come to light. The Lancaster mixed-use development, the redevelopment of the United Way building, the first level of the Encore building, the Hilton Annex, redevelopment of the Water Gardens, and the Water Gardens Place building. As previously stated, there are various new developments currently active and seeking TIF assistance. Additionally, these sites are not in the plan and often are the basis for discussions with developers. An amendment would provide an opportunity to seize investment potential in a most efficient process. These changes will encourage new growth, redevelopment along the Lancaster corridor, including new business and industry, thus increasing the tax base, and have a positive direct and indirect economic impacts. This is the current boundary of the Lancaster TIF. And these parcels highlighted in yellow reflect the locations of the additional projects. Although the TIF Board and City Council have already approved the amendment to the project and financing plan, we asked the county to amend their participation agreement in order to participate in these additional projects. Any rental residential development receiving TIF funding would require a minimum of 15% units to be set aside for low to moderate income tenants, and additionally, it would allow the TIF to support development of mixed-use and residential developments at specific sites that require streetscape improvements and/or parking structures. Per Tarrant County's participation agreement, the Commissioners Court must approve participation in any additional projects. And the next step will be to present the next projects, the Encore building and the Lancaster development, at the currently scheduled TIF 8 Lancaster Board meeting on September 14th at 2 p.m. in pre-council chambers. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
I move approval of the amendment to the TIF Board agreement. This has been a very successful TIF, and all we're doing here is asking that potential new projects be added to the development plan so that Maggie won't have to come back down here every time a new project is contemplated. Everything that was listed as a potential new project would add significantly to development within the TIF boundaries, would add significantly to tax revenues to all participating entities, including Tarrant County. And I'm glad that hospital district participation is not necessary, because I probably wouldn't be in favor of that. So that's a long explanation to a motion, and
I would second that, but can I ask a question first?
Sure.
One of the projects you just mentioned is the Lancaster development. Can you give me some details about that?
Sure. And we're still working out a few of the details as far as the design goes, but it will include office as well as residential. So there'll be parking and retail. So there'll be retail on the bottom, and then there'll be either office or residential on top. I believe the Catholic Diocese will also have a number of their historical documents there. And there'll also be a public parking garage. So there will be additional public parking in downtown.
I would second that motion.
I had a question on the taxable values. It appears that they have dropped, and you don't really show them coming back up to the level we started with until 2014.
Yes.
What type of impact do you see that having?
Well, essentially, it's still an increase from the base value, and the reason why the values have decreased is due to the economy. We keep our projections quite conservative, and so we only assume a 1.5% growth each year, although we do hope with these additional projects that the growth will increase at a faster rate.
I guess my question is, you don't really show a whole lot of a tremendous amount of increase in tax value. Your top one at 2018 is $433 million, and so.
What was the base value?
Oh, and I wish I had that number with me.
It started at 408.
No, I mean, but that's the valuable in
Right, that was
2009.
Yes.
It started in 2000 and.
This is the only thing.
This projection is based on a 1.5% growth on an annualized basis, so it's pretty conservative growth.
So the amount above the base that was contributed in 2009 was $3 million in taxes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that number is what was actually contributed in 2009.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, the base had to grow a little bit. I'm not sure how much it's grown, but.
I regret I do not have the number on me.
I think you said the right thing, that the economy had slowed things down. So.
It is, the current taxable values are higher than the base value of the TIF
But
originally.
is most of this development that you're talking about going to be by tax exempt entities, or then, I mean, I guess that's the other part of the question. If we put any kind of new construction in there at all, I mean, how much are we talking about? You talked about a parking garage.
Right, but part of the parking garage will be at market rate. A portion of the parking garage will be set aside for public parking, but then the rest of the parking garage will be set aside for the office and the retail, and that portion will be taxable.
Who will own the public parking? So who will own the parking garage?
I believe the local government corporation will own the parking garage.
Okay, and then the building and the condos that you're talking about building in down there?
I believe that since they will be condos, they will be owned by the entity that purchases that condo.
If you could
So it'll be individual. And I guess I'm just trying, I mean, how much are you
Sure.
proposing that's going to be?
I don't have that number off of the top of my head. I apologize.
none of these potential projects are to be owned by nonprofits.
Except for the United Way building. You got the United Way building.
It will be, it's currently the United Way building, but it will be,
United Way no longer occupies
Right.
that building. That will be sold to a private developer and repurposed.
Okay.
And I guess the question that
Right.
goes back to what Commissioner Fickus now has asked is that with these kind of increases in the taxable values, you're not showing any new construction in there.
We didn't, just to keep the projections as conservative as possible. The potential developments are actually, they are all private developments. One is expected to be a hotel. The lower level of the Encore building is expected to be restaurant and retail. So they will all be private development. They will not be for public use.
So I guess the
Except
question
for the-
is how much private development construction are you planning in your estimates?
Oh, multi-million dollars, sir.
So those aren't built into here at all?
No, they are not built in here at all.
This looks like it's just an inflation factor here.
It's what, 1.5?
Well, and just for the court's information, first of all, the dollars on the TIF can only be spent for infrastructure improvement. They can't be spent by the private sector to do these projects. Some of the things that they're looking at, when we say potential projects, that's not projects that the TIF is going to necessarily do, but projects that they believe that are going to occur. For example, the Hilton Annex. That's a private activity. And whenever and that's not going to be paid for by the TIF dollars. Once they do that project, then the value of that private activity will be added to the base, and it'll increase the amount of tax revenue that'll be generated.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Tidwell. Congratulations on being reappointed for
Thank you.
another term.
Thank you. Good to be reappointed, yes, sir. The first item we ask the court to consider this morning is to authorize the removal of assets from the county asset management system. You have a list of those, and there is a revised communication that was pointed out. These are assets that have been purchased. They're fully depreciated. For whatever reason, we no longer own them, but they're still on the books, and we need to simply clean up the books. This process has been ongoing for several years, and this is a very small number of assets compared to the many thousand of assets that the county owns. So,
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
and our other item is to ask the court to receive and file the Tarrant County financial statements for the period ended July of 2011.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Glenn.
I move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mrs. Glenn. Public Health, Ms. Brewer.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
We have one item for your approval this morning, and this is interim financing. We have 5 contracts from the state health services or health and human services departments. We have received letters of award for the amount. We're just waiting for the contracts. The previous 4 interim financing requests that we have brought to you have come in. You have approved them at previous meetings in August, so we have no outstanding interim financing prior to this request.
So we've been paid.
Yes. For the ones that I've
For the
come to you
4 previous.
previously, yes. Or we have the means to be paid. And the 5 contracts are HIV and STD state services, TB control, immunizations, local public health services, and nurse-family partnership.
And we've received letters of award on every one
All
of these.
5, yes. We're waiting for the contract.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
Maybe on my birthday, some of y'all can approve our agenda like Tina's. Maybe. We have 3 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for our bid number 2011-115. This is our annual contract for fax machine maintenance. A recommendation is to award the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in the court communique on a per price per machine basis, labor cost per hour, and percentage discount off price list for parts. Last year's expenditures were just a little bit over $10,000.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and approval. We'll try this again. We have a motion second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Number 2 is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2011-117. This is our annual contract for Panasonic Business Systems and our key voice equipment services. Recommendation is to select as our primary vendor Drake Communications, as our secondary vendor Technology Resource Center of America. Those expenditures last year were approximately $58,000.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is also a bid award recommendation for bid number 2011-122. This is our annual contract for the purchase of sedans countywide. Recommendation is to award the primary vendors, the 9 primaries as shown in the court communique on a per unit price basis and a discount from our list price.
I move for approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. How'd your hogs do in your ratings? Where did your hogs fall out in the ratings? Did y'all beat
15th out
A&M
of
this
20.
year? Let's see. Where are the Aggies?
Yeah, by the way.
Where are the Longhorns?
We don't care about the Longhorns.
Who cares about the Longhorns?
Where's LSU's quarterback this morning?
Well, LSU's number 4, Bubba. But he's not in jail yet. But LSU's number 4, I think. Y'all are number 15, and I believe A&M's number 8. So you got a ways to go there calling your hogs. If he's meeting with his attorney, at least he's not in jail.
Yet.
Would you like to get into this?
Me?
He can't.
Sheriff's Department, come right on.
He's from Aggie Roots.
Good morning. We have 3 items for you. Our number 1 item number 1, concerns our annual maintenance contract between the county and the Texas Attorney General's Office for annual maintenance on the Vine system. Through this agreement, we get $83,130 from the state to provide this service to victims of crime.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our item number 2, we're requesting approval of a memorandum of understanding between Tarrant County and the Council on Sex Offender Treatment to provide bed space on an as-needed basis for those sex offenders who are committed civilly. They will be part of our work release program. Under the agreement, we will receive a per diem rate of $70 per client.
So that's per client, so it'd be per night, per day?
Right, for housing and food.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. About how many folks might that be? Do you have any idea?
We don't know yet. I don't know that we have any figures on this yet. It's my understanding
It has been minimal over the years. We had one high-profile offender, but basically it's been, less than 2 or 3 of them a year, if any at all.
Okay.
Now, this is Chief Knowles Bailey-Wick, and he's out of town today, so I'm trying to cover for him.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our item number 3 involves a renewal, actually, and an amendment to our contract with the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District for 2 acres of space that we use in our livestock estray program. It's a place where we keep horses and impounded animals, and the annual amount is $1,200.
Move approval. And I think that's for water, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it's utilities.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Green, I was going to tell Ms. Lamb that our own TCU is one ranking above her hogs.
Commissioners, we're requesting the court to approve a real estate donation agreement between Tarrant County and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway Company in connection with the donation of property to Tarrant County containing a total of 1.717 acres. It's located along Avondale-Haslett Road between FM 156 and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad Company, and it's described in all of your attachments.
I move for approval.
Second?
I do have a question.
We have a motion and a second. Okay.
Jeannie, I understand the developer will be paying the cost
Yes, sir.
of this transfer?
He's already paid all of the cost with the exception of collection of the real estate taxes and the closing costs, and he will pay those at closing.
He's already paid everything else?
He has.
Okay.
He's paid all the other costs.
Okay, good deal.
Okay, then explain to me, first question I was going to ask is why are they donating property to us, but it sounds like there's a developer in here someplace. So tell me what's going on here.
The right-of-way, we thought, went from fence to fence, and then in 1992, the railroad actually acquired additional right-of-way with anticipation of building some type of an underpass or overpass in that area for the railroad track. They didn't ever construct that project, and so we have a strip of right-of-way that is alongside and parallel to our right-of-way between us and the developer, and we didn't realize that, and we've actually already been maintaining this since it was the railroads, because it appears to be railroad right-of-way when you look at it. And so what happened, though, is the developer came and requested a permit for a driveway, and we realized that we could not permit the driveway because it would go across railroad right-of-way, and the railroad had to do that permit. The railroad decided that it would probably be in everybody's best interest to just go ahead and dedicate the right-of-way to the county, since we've already been maintaining it since 1992. And the actual donation involves the fee simple estate that the right-of-way owns, even underlying our county right-of-way easement. So now we will have the full fee simple title to the right-of-way along that particular corridor.
I'm sure they retain the mineral interest.
Yes.
We thought about charging them for
Maintenance?
19 years of maintenance.
Look, you hadn't been charged for mowing the railroad right away.
That's right. Any other questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fickus, I believe you have an interlocal
I do
agreement.
have an interlocal agreement with the city of Southlake for the sale of liquid asphalt. Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Any appointments? There being none, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Maintenance.
Thank you, Honor. Members of the court, we have an item to bring to you this morning. This is the presentation of the hospital district's FY12 proposed budget. Mr. Early, this is not Mr. Early. Thank goodness.
Judge, Commissioners, Tarrant County Hospital District is present today, and I'd like to introduce the members that are here. Vice Chairman Trent Petty, Dr. Charles Weber, Carly Powell, our newly elected Board Secretary, Ralph Emerson, and our newest member of the Board, Dorothy DeVotes. 2010-2011 was a challenging fiscal year for us, and we're excited to report that we're going to show a positive variance for our budget of over $715,000. Significant to this year was our EPIC project, the move to the electronic medical record, which is a significant capital commitment as well as ongoing operational commitment, and has impact over the next few years for us. It was something that the feds have required of us, and we think it's going to be something that contributes significantly to patient care and satisfaction.
Scott, what's the go live on that?
Go live is May
May of
2012.
this coming year. Good.
Our board, this particular year, our 2011-2012 budget has been probably the most difficult budget that we have faced as a board. And I would say to you that the Board of Managers has worked very diligently with staff to present to you a budget that's balanced. We have increased demand due to the economy. We have decreased revenues and funding, and uncertainty related to our Medicare, Medicaid, and UPL funding for the future. But through this process, I would say to you, our board, our physicians, our staff, and even some of our past vocal public critics have commented that this budget process for 2011-2012 was the most transparent and engaging process that they have witnessed. And so we come to you today with a recommendation for a balanced budget with no increase in taxes. And with that, I'll introduce to you, unless you have any questions, I'll introduce.
Well, I was a little amazed to read some of the commentary on the editorial that was in there by some of your most vocal critics of the past. So,
yeah, that's a positive thing. Good press is good press.
yes, it is.
Mr. Robert Early, our CEO, who we're excited who is our CEO.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I want to make a few introductory comments, and then I'm going to introduce David Salisbury, our Chief Financial Officer, to go through some of the particulars. I think, though, for the purposes of the community and the public listening and watching, I think there has to be an understanding of what you as commissioners have done regarding this budget as well, because I don't want the public to perceive the fact that just because we're presenting here today is the first time you've seen this budget or understand the analysis of it. You all have dedicated your time and your effort to sitting down with us as staff and board members to figure out what are the particulars of this budget. You went through a lot of discussion about what the policies were, where we're going, what we're trying to do, and I think that is a compliment to you as commissioners. Your willingness to strongly support this hospital district, your willingness to give us suggestions and give us ideas on how we can become better through the voices of your constituents. The other thing I want to thank you for is, as Mr. Fisher mentioned, the board members that are here today is a microcosm of a good board. You've got 11 strong board members, and I compliment you as commissioners to taking the time and the effort to appoint members to that board that help this community. Each one brings a different perspective, and we have lively discussions, we have positive discussions, and we have a forward movement. I think the one thing that JPS can be credited for, including staff, board members, and you as commissioners, is a very forward progression. We have not stayed still, and we have not accepted things that are not right. And some of the revealing of the things that aren't right aren't pleasant when you have to go out in front of the community and say, we have historically done wrong, but we're going to do better. I also think that we are willing to admit what our mistakes are, and that has been helpful. When you serve 1.1 million people with their health care needs and 55 different languages spoken, with a lot of cultural differences and a lot of expectations, you will not please people on all occasions. And you as elected officials will get comments and concerns from them. We got a letter from a gentleman today, as a matter of fact, and he said, I want to thank JPS. I want to thank you for the care that you gave me, but I also want to tell you that I don't want to be in your hospital now or ever again. But you were great when I was there. We are not the Hyatt Regency or the Day Spa. Nobody wants to come to us. So we inherently have it tougher going in, but I want to thank you all. A couple things that I wanted to highlight for the year that was a challenge for us, and some of our critics and others said you can't even do it. And the first one I want to highlight is the fact that we now do all the open heart surgeries at JPS that we should have always been doing. We now do them. As of this morning, we are at 126 hearts that came in for open heart surgery since November 30th. And those 126 hearts are healthy. And we're proud of that. We took on a big project, and we completed that project, and we have, at least for this period of time, been quite successful. And I have every indication in the future we will be successful with that program. We've also done a few other things that I think are very helpful. With Commissioner Wynn's counsel,
and the council that we've had previously is trying to figure out the best services that we can offer for a facility over there that hasn't worked out as well as one would want it to, and that's the Arlington facility. We are now in a plan to reconfigure that facility and make it a better servicing facility for the citizens of Arlington, Cannondale, and Mansfield, and that area of Tarrant County, and we're pleased with that. That facility is already there, and I think we're making it better. We also conducted a master facility plan and a strategic plan for where we go. The biggest question about that strategic plan is how much is it going to cost? It's always the question. You always flip to the back page of any proposal and see how much it's going to cost, and then you listen to see what somebody's telling you. I told everybody at JPS it's going to cost as much as we can afford, and it's going to cost what you can do by changing the metrics and by creating efficiencies. If you create better efficiencies and we have additional dollars, you're going to see something happen probably on your floor that's going to be beneficial. If you don't, and you keep inefficiency going, and you don't improve, you won't see improvements to a master facility plan. You won't see a good strategic approach. That puts a burden on everybody that walks in the door and works at JPS. The other thing that we did, which I think is a huge benefit, and it's all at our cost, is we added our emergency residency program. We did a study, a needs assessment study, that indicated that 41% of all the emergency rooms in Tarrant County are overutilized. They're going to continue to be overutilized. That's just the way we are as humans. There's too many people in this community and throughout the nation that go to the emergency room as their primary care doctor. We can try to reduce that, but there's still going to be an inherent level by which they do that. So we have to be certain in the Metroplex and in this area that we're training the doctors that are going to go in and man those emergency rooms. We just started our new residency program, and I'm proud of it. It's a good program, and we've got a new team in that's running it, and I think you're going to see some really nice things come out of those that are educated at JPS and become our doctors of the future, because I don't think this area is going to see a shortage of emergency room doctors because of that very reason. So those are some of the strategic approaches that we've taken that have been new initiatives, new actions, new approaches. I again want to thank you for allowing me to come monthly and give you updates and allow the input that you all have provided us in trying to figure out how to make a hospital district better at all times. So appreciate your efforts, appreciate your concerns when we're doing right and when we can improve. You've been very helpful to us. And I publicly want to thank the board. The people behind me that serve on that board, I don't know that the public understands, and I'm not saying anything about you as commissioners or judge in your disclosure to their pay and their amount of work, because I'm sure you're very forthright in all that, but they are paid by cookies, and the amount of time that they spend is immeasurable. The reason that this budget is the way it is because of David Salisbury and a good chief financial officer, but it's also good because you got a chairman of a finance committee in Trent Petty and his committee that spends an immeasurable amount of time going through the budget. And when you have a budget like we have this year, it's not easy because everybody wants their services and no one wants to pay for it and no one wants the reality of knowing you don't have as much money coming in the front door. So the board members have all done an incredible amount of work, and Ralph Emerson and the others, and what we've been doing with our facility plan and what we rolled out last meeting. And I know I'm not going to give you an update on the last meeting, but we did roll out our initiatives for our diversity plan. We've hired a consulting firm that I think is wonderful called K Strategies that has helped us develop that. And again, when you have 55 different languages spoken, this is not all about who you hire and who you don't hire. That's a big portion of it, but a lot of it is kind of patient care, knowing cultural differences. When somebody is in a life-threatening situation and we have the remedy for them, but yet it may be against their culture to accept it, we have to bring in our chaplains, our doctors, and our folks and realize how you talk to those people and how you communicate how we want to save their life, even though it may be a religious issue or a cultural issue. That's what our diversity program is going to encompass, everything from start to finish. We rolled that out last. Ralph Emerson, and I'm sure some of our newer board members will play a key role in that. So thank you. I'd like to bring up David Salisbury, unless you all have any questions of me. But I'd like to bring up our chief financial officer, who I think has done an incredible job at JPS, and we're proud to have him. David, don't let me down now. Put you on pedestal.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, David. Good morning.
Let me just follow up to Robert's comments. as you know, in healthcare, as probably most life, there's always lots of ideas on how to spend money, many more than there are how to save money, particularly when you have such high demands. And 2012, as is previously indicated, is a challenging year for us. It's a challenging year for all providers in healthcare. We're no exception to it. And as we all can see from the national picture, healthcare is going under an incredible transformation. The problem is for us providers on the local level is we have to figure out how to keep moving the organization forward while we deal with uncertain transformation. And that was actually one of the most significant of all of our issues we had to deal with in our budget, and that is our first item here. I've kind of identified for you here kind of four major factors that impacted our budget for next year, and the first of which is Texas and their legislature has approved sweeping changes to the Medicaid program that will have a fairly dramatic impact on how we get paid. Right now, through various programs, through Medicaid, we get about $200 million worth of payment through different mechanisms. And about 60% of those dollars are going to be funded very differently in 2012. In fact, starting September 1st. And we're still working with the state to try to understand what those changes are. And that's really presented our most significant challenge in our budget this year, is just that our dollars are very uncertain. Those dollars are related to, and you've probably heard, our UPL dollars, our upper payment limit dollars. And that program goes away August 31st as the state converts all Medicaid to managed care. What's going to replace that is what's referred to as an 1115 waiver. And that waiver has two key components. It's got a component for payment for uncompensated care, which we think helps us for certain services and programs that today we get funded for today, but also potentially tomorrow programs we don't get funded for today. It also has a second component to it, in that it has a fairly intensive regional health planning effort as part of that. And so you're going to see over the next year a fairly significant effort by a part of the state to identify regions of the state to help develop health plans. And they've actually funded, or looking to fund some of this through this 1115 waiver. The waiver has not yet been approved by the federal government. That's done through the CMS. But the state, in a meeting that we were in last week, says they're very close to getting that approval. And so that was really our biggest challenge as we worked with this budget. Is, as I said, we had about $120 million of our payment in this budget that we really weren't as certain as we could have been had we had budgeted in past years. Secondly, it's been noted we're making a very significant electronic medical record investment, and for next year that's going to certainly hit us hard because we're turning the system live on May 5th of 2012. And so what you have with that is you have a fair amount of one-time costs that you get if you think about it. We've got to train nearly 4,500 staff in a matter of about 90 days on how to use this system. And so it's a very major effort to not only build and set up the system, but to really then turn it on. And those costs will occur in the
You mentioned that you have $120 million of the revenue that was uncertain as a result of this. Mm-hmm. With regards to that, are you assuming then that you won't get that? How does that 120 affect your budget?
Well, what the state has done is they have put in some guardrails over the year that says that we would get paid. They would give us caps in terms of what we would get paid in terms of how we get paid today. The mechanisms would change, but the dollars would be different. But there's also then additional opportunity to get paid for things that we're not paid for today. So the state.
You're telling me that there's a part of that 120 you have assumed you're not going to get, and a part of it that you feel like you will.
Yes.
What is the part you think you'll get?
What's that? Well, I'll show you here when I get to the income statement. Okay. I'll show you what we think we're going to get and what we think we're going to lose on that. As I indicated, our electronic medical record investment is fairly significant. It's important. if we don't make the changes that we have, the system we have now was put in the late 80s. And so the technology investment is really necessary to be at current state. Ad valorem tax, as was noted earlier, we're not asking or seeking any tax rate increase. On that, there is a slight increase in the amount of dollars because the tax base has increased, but we're not seeking any tax rate there. And then fourthly, just yes, sir.
Excuse me, on the electronic medical record investment, the investment that you have booked is just the investment in hardware and software, I would imagine.
To date, yes.
A tremendous portion of installing one of these systems is training and change management. How do you intend to manage that so that you have a smooth implementation of this system?
Well, we're going to look at we've kind of looked at it in three ways. The change management process, we went through a process within the organization guided by Epic, the vendor that we have, and Accenture, the consultant that we have helping us. We went through a series of 3 redesign sessions where we sat down and took their functionality, we took their model system, and evaluated that against our internal processes that we have today and our internal system. So that initial process has been done. We're now in the build process where we're actually building
I would hope
system.
that changes that were necessitated as a result of that were made to the way JPS does business rather than to the software programming.
That's correct. That's correct. But what you'll find when you do install a more state-of-the-art system, that it does better enable you to do the things that you want to do because it has functionality that you haven't had. We'll talk in a minute about medical home model, whereby we're changing our relationship with our patient and our primary care physician. This system now has a functionality called MyChart, where patients can check some of their own records. They can schedule appointments online. So you interact very differently with that patient. So we had to go through sessions to really try to understand how that worked and understand how that would work for us in our environment. And then what you do in that process is you make decisions in terms of how you want to use their system, and then you go through the build process. And that's a fairly lengthy process. It's about 6 months. We're halfway through it now. We'll be done at the end of October. And that's where you actually are building it to your requirements. And then, of course, the important part is the testing, which will then follow that process. So that gets you to the point where you can train. And so you have a system available. We'll have a system available 1st of November that will be generally available for people to see and work and touch and feel and get a sense of that.
So you'll be training from November to go live in May.
We'll have some early training done with what we are doing in the institution is identifying super users. So those super users are your people who tend to gravitate to automation and who are influencers in their area, and that will start very, very, very early on, and then we'll then migrate to then where we'll have to then train all staff. And because obviously JPS is spread out throughout the whole county, we're actually setting up training centers in different parts of the county so that the people can stay close to where they actually work and train. And then once people are trained, they have to take a certification test, and then they're allowed to enter what's called a playground environment where they can actually go in and keep that up. Because the challenge is when you bring a system this complex live, if you train too early, people lose it before they go live. But yet on the other hand, we've got 4,500 people to train. So it's a massive training effort. And then, but then the other piece that's just as critical is having people on the ground when you go live. And so we're right now going through that, but we've identified we probably need for the first 2 to 3 weeks after go live about 500 to 600 people on the ground to support those 4,500 employees. So you'll have almost 1 in one person for about every eight employees. And so that's fairly significant as well to the go line.
My only concern, and it sounds like you're on top of it, is that JPS is too critical to this community. And this electronic medical record system is too critical to the delivery of health care in this community to have a train wreck when we go live. It all has to work.
That's right. Nope. We understand that.
Thank you.
And finally, then, some of the other operating challenges, things that we see as important in 2012. I'll talk a minute about patient-family-centered home and what that means, because that is a very different way of how we're changing our relationship and caring for our patients. Inflation, a lot of people lose track of inflation. Inflation just on our size of budget is anywhere between $15, $20 million a year. And so it's not it's not an insignificant amount. We can continue to see about a 3 to 5% increase in the unfunded population. And historically, JPS and many other providers have used investment returns to help fund operations and other types of activities. And in the current market, the interest rates are so low, there's really not much by way of significance in terms of investment returns to help do that. So those are, again, at a very, very high level, some of the macro drivers. As I indicated, we've got about $9.5 million. So to your question, Commissioner Brooks, certainly we have quite a bit of resource dedicated to the different aspects of training, of backfilling staff, because you have to pull staff out of line, and you have to, again, continue to maintain operations, provide support, and you see some of the components of that. So that's, again, very significant for us. But again, we see this as very much an investment as we did when we built the new facility there, and it's got to work. The patient and family-centered medical home, I'll just point out a few things here that we're doing. We actually are going to put in a 24/7 access line whereby patients can call and get a nurse on the phone. And we think that will help a lot with the care that goes to the emergency room, because often people will go straight to the emergency room, and if you can help triage that before they get there, you can help get them to a setting that's a lower cost on that. And so we're looking to improve access there. We're looking to improve our appointment access. This is where the Epic system will help us fairly significantly, because we have certainly much more sophisticated tools around scheduling and appointment management there. I'll point to the last bullet there. There's a very heavy patient education program. Much of what we do today, we're reactive to a patient's illness or their current condition. And we're trying to begin to understand that patient and begin to provide education to that patient around how you manage your illness, around even things like a diet for a diabetic patient, for instance. And so there's some key program elements to that. And then secondly, we're going to redefine some of our staff's role as being a healthcare coach. And that person is the person that's going to be the person that's going to help oversee that relationship between the physician and the patient and the things that are happening lifestyle-wise and things that are happening with them medically to help manage their health care on that. And so we are making some fairly significant changes there. And then the other thing that I'll note, the third bullet down on this next slide, the Epic does have a functionality called MyChart, and that's where you can go in and manage some of the information that you get. It can manage appointments. It can provide notices, for instance, when indicators may indicate, for instance, a mammogram. It can provide notice for that, updates of immunizations, things of that nature. And so we're looking for, we're obviously looking to have a fair number of implementations there. We've also are making some program changes. Robert's noted the ED split flow model that we've been working on and trying to triage care there. Our residents program, by the end of next year, we'll have 24 residents in that program. We have 9 that just started, and we'll have 24 there. We've made some program changes in looking at trying to realign services, though. As we know, this is a difficult budget, but at the same time, we have to continually try to balance our resources with our efficiencies. And that really is a combination of looking at services that have low volume or services that are in geographical proximity to other areas. We have over 40-plus sites within the county, and any time you have a site, you have certain costs that you have to have there, whether you see one patient or 20 patients in a day. And so we've looked at some of those sites, and we've looked at some of our radiology services where we could realign some services there. We've looked to relicense our Watauga clinic so that they can continue to receive prescriptions but not have to have a pharmacist on site. Our school-based clinics during the summer, the volume drops off, and so we're looking at managing and coordinating summer hours in those clinics. Urgent care, if you look at certain hours of the night on urgent care, we see approximately two patients an hour will come into urgent care, yet right next door to our urgent care on Main Street, we have a fully functioning emergency room that's seeing lower volumes. And so,
your clinic efficiencies, program changes, are any employees, or I guess the question is, are all those employees being reassigned to other areas?
Yes, they will be. Yes, they will be. Yep. And so then you can see some of the other areas that we have some smaller clinics, Alliance, Triethnic, et cetera. So we're working through all of that now. As we've worked through some of it, we've made some modifications to it. The leadership within our urgent care think it would be better to close from 12 to 7 because of the impact on staff when they have to come to work on that, as opposed to coming at 6, coming at 7 is better, particularly for some of our nurses that have child care. And so we are making a few modifications to some of those, but we've kind of worked through those within the institution.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
First, on your program changes, the realignment of radiology services and the pairing of clinics for the purposes of radiological services. Some of these are pretty far apart geographically. How do you intend to make that work?
Well, the challenge that we have today in some of these clinics, when you only have one radiology provider, you get into some challenges at times when staff calls off sick, for instance, and you have to cancel service and move patients for that. And so we have looked at trying to figure out what areas that a patient would have to travel anyway to us, and what's the distance between those two. And so we've not found these distances to be extremely prohibitive in that, but they are certainly would require additional travel.
Part of the burden is on us in giving them pre-advanced notices on their radiological services as well. And I think it's incumbent upon JPS to say on Wednesday, instead of going to the Watauga facility where you were originally seen, we'd like for you to go to this facility. Part of that is giving them knowledge as to where to go in advance rather than just showing up and providing the services. So I think part of it is better scheduling on our part and better knowledge about what facility you should go to. I understand your concern about them being further spread apart, and there's going to be some that are going to be challenges, no question.
So radiologic services will be located at Northwest Diamond Hill and Viola Pitts, is that correct? No. What?
Yeah.
They will be located at Watauga Stop 6 and Viola Pitts.
Yes.
Okay, again, I'm concerned about the distances between Diamond Hill and Stop 6, for instance, and South Campus and Viola Pitts. I mean, it works well if you've got a car,
Right.
but if you're using public transportation, that can be a pretty big burden.
We don't want to minimize or mitigate it in any way. We'll kind of monitor to see how it goes, definitely. But it is going to be a challenge. The transportation, particularly in this community where public transportation is a concern on all levels. It's a concern for our patients just getting to a facility, period. And when we go to some specialty clinics that aren't offered at every clinic, we run that challenge.
My other question is about medical homes, particularly for these 4 clinics that are being closed. Have we planned for creating medical homes at the new facilities for the patients who are being transferred over?
Yeah, the medical home implementation is being planned around, initially around those patients who already have a PCP or a provider relationship where they're actually seeing that provider on a regular basis. And so it's actually going to be across multiple sites. And so it's not really planned around the individual site as much as it's planned around the individuals who already have an established relationship. And that's about, of our 50,000 members, we've identified about 20,000 of our Connections members who, when you look at their visit history, you can see a recurring relationship with a PCP. That's where we're going to start, and then we will then extend it then to the point where we start to assign people a PCP, and that person would then be assigned based upon their proximity geographically to a provider. Now, they still can choose a provider of their choice on that, but we will look at that as we expand it beyond those areas where there's not that established relationship today.
Again, my concern is for patients of the clinics that are being closed, that they be given the same access to a medical home as those who are in clinics that are not being closed.
Yes, and they will be. Yeah, they will be. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Let me just go through some of the high-level statistical trend. You actually see for next year we are budgeting a slight decrease in admissions, and that is due entirely to what we've seen in a trend over the last 18 months in a decreasing number of deliveries. It's a national trend. We've budgeted for next year a 15% reduction in deliveries. It's pretty documented that deliveries decrease during periods of recession or economic uncertainty, and we're seeing it this year on that. Obviously, we've budgeted that all other services would continue at the current volumes and levels that they exist today. But you'll see our admissions are dropping down, and our patient days subsequently to that are dropping down. Outpatient visits, you'll see, are up slightly for the year and have kind of leveled off in the last 2 years from that. Adjusted patient days is a ratio that we use to calculate to look at certain aspects of our costs related to salary costs, related to supply costs, and it's a function of trying to convert all of your volumes into a common denominator for that. And so you'll see there's, again, a slight decrease due principally to the decrease in the deliveries. Our revenue...
David, can I ask you a quick question on that?
Certainly.
With the decrease in the number of deliveries, is that going to have a negative impact on your cash?
No. Clearly, most deliveries are paid for. About 70% of our deliveries are for the undocumented population, but Medicaid will pay for those deliveries. Okay? So there are cases that we get paid for today that we don't, but we've had to adjust staffing, too.
And that payment doesn't cover your total cost?
No, it doesn't cover our total cost for that. In terms of looking kind of at our total revenue sources, to give you a picture here, you'll see obviously our largest single piece for our revenue source is our tax dollars that we get, the 40%. Collections that we get from patients on net patient revenue, that would be from Medicare, Medicaid, third parties. You'll see there's about 36%. Texas DISH and UPL payments are about 17% of our dollars. Other operating revenues would be like cafeteria revenues. We get donations from, the single biggest piece of that is we get donations from drug and pharmaceutical companies for vaccines and other drugs that we provide to some of our patients. And then non-operating is principally our investment income. So you'll see our sources there. This is a real busy slide. I'll really just kind of focus on two items as I noted there. Our tax rate, you'll see there in totals, not changing. Our INS rate is going down slightly because our debt service is going down slightly. We have not anticipated any new debt in the budget for the new year on that. And so when you work those factors down through the tax base and the TIF adjustment, then you'll see tax revenues are increasing, you'll see there, from about $272 million to $275.5 million. And that's certainly important to us that that's increasing slightly after coming off of a year where we've seen about an $8 million reduction in our tax dollars. Our capital budget, which doesn't hit the income statement, but are those items that we have to budget for capital improvements. You'll see capital equipment, mainly being medical equipment for places like OR, radiology, and the like. You'll see the information technology, some improvements in software that we have there for about $3.3 million. It's not related to our medical record system. You'll see our medical record system on the capital side is about $31 million. So that's in addition to the costs that I showed you earlier that were recognized as your operating expenses. We have new facility renovations. The most significant piece of that is the Arlington project that Robert talked about a little bit. We have some projects in play now that will carry over from 11, and then we have about $1 million contingency. So you'll see there we have about a $58 million capital budget. If you look at our depreciation expense on our income statement, you'll see we have about $45.8 million. So we will be reducing cash reserves because of that. And again, it's principally due to the EMR that we're funding pretty much through cash on that. So when you pull that all together, this slide just shows you then the side-by-side that shows 2011 compared to 12, as Scott identified. We are projecting that we'll end the year to break even, slightly positive from break even for the year. And to the question earlier about the DISH and the UPL, you'll see on the third line there, our Texas DISH UPL, where the state has said they would hold us harmless for the transition year. You'll see there's about $95.9 million in terms of what we get today. We think the waiver, based on some preliminary models that we've run, could generate some dollars. You'll see there about $21.5 million. Again, that number is something that we're still working with the state, and we're still working as the state tries to finalize their program there before we'll fully know what that is. And so that's the DISH UPL that comes through on the revenue side. There is a piece of the DISH UPL that comes through on the tax side, on the expense side, and you'll see that under the line item called professional fees. And you'll see there about a $9.6 million increase, and that is due to the fact that because of the way the tax rates impact us in terms of how we pay the tax in order to draw the federal money down, that tax rate is going up. And so that will impact us there negatively to the tune of about $9.6 million. So we've budgeted for that. So it does hit in a couple different places, but that's the most significant piece of that. So you'll see total operating revenues there are projected again to go up by $29 million. And again, we're still working through the payment reform piece of that, but we do believe that we believe that there's some opportunities for additional dollars. As far as our operating expense, you'll see there our benefit and salary and wages and contract labor cost. We've tried to hold those costs so that we can maintain efficiencies. And again, it was what was causing us to look at trying to create some efficiencies within the institution from that. Purchase services, much of that cost is related to the IT cost. You'll see there. Drugs and pharmaceuticals is really just general inflation on the drugs and pharmaceuticals that we get in the institution. And then the other big increase is depreciation expense. And what happens on a project like EPIC is you capitalize these costs and then you have to begin to depreciate them. And the difficulty and the challenge for an organization like ours around the IT areas is the depreciation rules really will require you to depreciate it over about a 5 to 7 year time period, yet we're replacing a system that we installed in the late 90s. And so when you capitalize that cost, you'll see a pretty big increase in the year that you go live, and that's most of what that increase is there. So with that, you'll see then in total non-operating income of about $5.6 million, and so the budget.
Are you loaning your money through PAL to get a higher interest rate? I mean, based upon our interest rates, you're either loan sharking or you got about $5 billion in. How are you coming up with $5.9 million in investment?
Well, I mean, that's based on how.
Is that a lot of that tobacco money coming in? Is that tobacco earnings?
What's that?
I'm serious. I mean, $5.9 million, I mean, that's not interest rate money. That's got to be coming in from the tobacco settlement.
No, I mean, that's the return on the investments that we've got.
Okay.
So,
I know what you're thinking.
So,
I mean, we're in our housing finance right now. I think we're averaging maybe 0.3, 30 basis points. That's high in most stuff. I guess you could have a lot of CDs, but at 30 basis points, that means you got. You don't have that much cash. I'm not even going to say that number again. You don't have that much cash.
now, most of ours, we've laddered our investments over a 2 to 3 year time
So what do you
period.
think your interest rate is on your longest?
And so on our longest, we're getting about 1.3 to 1.5% on CDs. We're basically
Where you hiding all that money to
CDs.
get you $6 million?
At 1%, I guess. I mean, that's $600-700 million. Now, I guess that is not beyond reason. I'd love to see a balance sheet.
Okay.
How much was the tobacco income last year? Do you remember? Trent?
The tobacco income was about $5.3 million.
Well, that's it right there. So it's not coming from your earnings off your money that you've got in the bank. It's coming. You got $5.3 million from the tobacco settlement money.
No, that's up in our other operating revenue, the tobacco funds. So.
Okay.
So.
Anybody out there could maybe address this?
I think if we can look at a balance sheet, that'll at least give us some indication, but.
Okay.
So you think your average return is over the 3-year spread on the ladders is?
It's the average return over the 3-year spread. I mean, because we have some investments that are in reserve funds that are in the 5 to 10 year time period. So our average return is about 1 to 1.3% in total overall. I mean, you do have some other things. We get some royalties off of some oil and gas properties that's in that, and some other items that are in. That's just not all investment income, but they come from other areas that's generated not generated from just cash assets. Okay? You get rebates. There's some rebates and some other things that are in that number.
Do you know the total of your investment portfolio?
Well,
excluding oil and gas and.
The total days cash on hand that we have, we tend to measure it by days cash on hand. By year end would be 130 days. Okay, 130 days. The total cash that's involved with that, depending on what time of the year, because you got to remember, we collect those cash dollars at the beginning of the year. Okay, so you got that. Okay, and so by year end, it works itself down to about $300 million.
Okay.
But again, that's you have to keep that in perspective. That's 130 days cash. Our bond entities require us to maintain a minimum of 75. They have certain triggers that kick in if you go below 100 days cash on hand.
And you have a board policy also that says that number.
Yeah, we have a board policy that sets that as well. So,
Charlie, you need to run your bank that way. That's a pretty good return.
Yeah.
Good job,
Yeah.
Charlie. You used a little bit of discretion there. Just
Right. Right. But I want to be clear. That's. I mean, but I do want to be clear. That's not just
It might be
interest
helpful
off
to
of.
get an idea
So
of what-
I can give you a breakout of that. So like I said, we get other donated property. We get investments and other things off of that.
So,
that we
David,
could
the
get.
question becomes, with this 5.9, are you comfortable with that number for 2012? Are you comfortable with the 5.9?
Well, I can't tell you I'm comfortable at all with the investment markets. I'm just going to be frank with you on that, okay? Am I comfortable that we've made a reasonable estimates based on the types of rates that we've been getting recently? Yes. Okay? Okay.
What kind of salary adjustments do you have in there?
2%.
Okay.
Merit adjustment.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
We will be bringing this budget back to the court along with the proposed tax rate on September 13th for court action. Members of the court, we only have one other item, and we've listed it. If there's any discussion on it, that's item E, which is the local elections issue. I know that there was a meeting of the elections board yesterday. Some of the court members were at that also, and we simply put that, we do not have a presentation on that. We simply put that on there if there was any comments from the court.
Any questions or comments regarding that?
Accomplished anything yesterday?
I think the discussion became more clear, and we're continuing to move down that path. A lot of the things that the court did last week are going to have a significant impact on how we move forward. And I would venture to say, and Judge, you chaired that, but I thought it was a very positive meeting yesterday.
Again, we had two new members that had not, the main purpose of the meeting was to, again, introduce our two new members, Ron and Mary Louise, and also to at least give an update as to where we were on the process. Nothing that we hadn't discussed at this particular deal, but again, just to kind of let everybody know what our alternatives are, kind of the court's thinking with regards to the motion that we made last week, and kind of some of our thinking along that type lines. And I think as we noted yesterday, both the parties as well as the municipalities and school districts each have reasons for why they feel strongly about the way they feel. The one thing that everybody agrees with is that nobody wants to spend $5 million to purchase additional equipment and or storage space. So good. I think it's just now a matter of figuring out how we make sure everybody's happy with that. So,
Your Honor, before we adjourn, we need to ask Chairman Fisher to come up and close the Hospital District Board meeting.
He might want to keep meeting.
Tarrant County Hospital District Board of Managers meeting is adjourned.
And the Tarrant County Commissioners Court meeting is adjourned.
See all or most of you, and awesome.
You heading down there now?